Hello, and welcome to the Straight to the Source podcast. I'm Tanya Barr.
And I'm Lucy Allon, and we're looking forward to taking you straight to the source of the people driving the food and hospitality industry forward.
Today's episode is brought to you by our friends at Unox Australia, leaders in innovation and kitchen technology.
Today, we're going straight to the source with Nik Hill, someone who's making serious waves in the Sydney food scene. Nik cut his teeth in elite kitchens like the Ledbury and Sepia before taking the reins at the old Fitz and then opening his own restaurant Porcine in Paddington back in 2022. I'm talking to Nik about what drives him, how he's carved a really unique pathway in the Sydney food scene, and where he's taking it to next. Nik, welcome to the studio.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
It's great to have you here. Really great. I was reflecting this morning how long we've known each other. A really long time.
A couple of moons, yeah.
We first met in 2007 when you competed in the Young Chef of the Year competition, which I co-founded with Luke, and I was working on full-time on the awards at that time. How old were you then?
Oh, a ripe young 22, I think. 22, 23, yeah.
Okay, so still really in the early stages.
Yeah.
I want to talk about that competition a little bit with you, but let's go back to the beginning of where you started. You began cooking professionally at quite a young age, didn't you? What got you started?
Yeah, 15 I was. Equal parts of like finding something interesting like cooking and like a real hatred for school. Like I wasn't a vibe, and I didn't really care much. I think I liked the whole idea of when we did like cooking classes, which you kind of had to do as part of your curriculum. I enjoyed that. And then I liked eating, so it was pretty simple. And I didn't want to go in an office. I knew that was kind of never a vibe. Uni wasn't a thing. And then I think it was one of my teachers that said to my parents, like, get this kid an apprenticeship because he's not going to be here. Yeah, I don't have like the beautiful story of sitting around the table with grandma, but my mum is a great cook. And both my parents are journalists. So mum went on this big journo trip to Italy, and when she came back, she was super inspired. She just cooked for like 2 months straight. And so I cooked with her a lot there, and I suppose that was a bit of an inspiration for the actual cooking side of it. But I wasn't really, the romance of cooking wasn't why I wanted to do it. I think I just wanted to get out of school, and in my head I was like, I'll get a trade under my belt and then just do what I want to do from there. Yeah, I just didn't want to do that. So I just wanted to do something different, I think. But it was very much in the early set years, it was about like the excitement and the adrenaline of service, I think. That's what really got me pumped on cooking was like, I didn't realize that you sort of did all this work in the morning and then you finished it off between 12 and 3 or 5 and, 7 and 10, And then when that kind of was like, oh, this is kind of cool. Like there's a real structure to all this sort of stuff. And I felt like I did need a bit of discipline in my life. So I liked the kind of military-esque discipline that came with the kitchen. And it really did help me. Like I was a total brat. So it was a good vibe. And I'm sure my early head chefs will attest to that. The first restaurant I worked at was a place called Spitlers, which is where Ormeggio is now.
Okay.
On the spit there. Yeah. And it was like Shatterpack Nile perch, crumbed and sold as barramundi, and like when barramundi was like hot off the press, and I think we used to do $27 fish and chips, and we were expensive then.
Right.
And like, but it was pretty prestige. The people like Rene Rifkin was he lived local and would always come in for fish and chips. And I just remember doing the first year there, and I don't know, I couldn't tell you what the food was other than the fish and chips, but I just loved like the service and the adrenaline and all that sort of stuff, and I think that's what really got me into it.
So how did you go from cooking at that restaurant at the Spit Bridge, in sort of northern Sydney suburbs to working in the elite kitchens of the Ledbury and Sepia? Like that's quite a leapfrog.
Yeah.
From start
I think mentors. I had the right people.
Okay.
And I really listened to them because I needed someone to kick my ass. And then when that started to happen, I was like, right, so there's a guy who came in, I fully lost contact with him. It was way before social media, so God knows where he is now. But he was this Irish bloke, and he was like bog Irish, like blunt, And
so like it was.
Yeah, and he kicked my ass a bit. But he had just finished working at the Capitol in London, which was Eric Chavot, who had worked for Marco and was very hardcore, which I researched later on and realised, where he worked. So he came in like guns blazing, and he had like it's a little thing, but I still remember he had like that blue striped apron that you see all like the guys in London wear, like that sort of look, and like he was pretty rough around the edges, and I was like, oh, this guy's a real chef, like the other ones were still everyone was pretty chill working there, but he was like hardcore, and he sort of drilled me. It's like when you need to work in London, like that's where it was, and I think aubergine was just pushing on Gordon, all that sort of thing. That real movement was happening then. So I became a bit fascinated with that, and he was the first one to really be like, you need to start to work in better restaurants than just sitting here doing fish and chips. So I did a year with him there, or 6 months after he'd sort of started, and then they used to do that Let's Do Lunch, Good Food used to do that. Remember that? It was like $25 in a glass of wine. And because Mum's a foodie, me and my mum used to go for lunch to do that all the time. So we'd go 3 or 4 restaurants. And then the first year we went to Bathers. And then
when Serge was there,
and I still remember it was like ocean trout on popiat in a piece of glad bake with all the julienne vegetables, and then they pour a champagne velouté at the table, and I was like, wow, I've never seen this, you know?
Yeah.
And and then Mum was like, drop your CV, and I kind of was like, you know, realised that was a bit of a spot to go, and I got a trial and went from there, you know, and I just I feel like I had the right mentors through the Bathers kitchens to keep pushing and saying like not the only thing stopping you is you.
Yeah.
You know, if you want to push and drive this, you got to do it yourself, but it's on the table if you want it, you know. So.
Yeah, absolutely. So you have worked in some really elite kitchens, clearly, and I mentioned the Ledbury and Sepia before, and you went on to take the reins at the old Fitz to do your own thing there. But how do you think those sort of London and Sydney experiences and the mentors that you worked with, how did they shape your culinary style and leadership?
Oh yeah, leadership's a big one, I think. Like, because, you know, the people I worked for and really worked for, like I worked in some kitchens that I took a bit from, but the ones I really spent a lot of time in, the ones I found the most fascinating were the owner operators, you know. So Phil Johnson at Echo, like Phil would rock, he would do the grill and I'd do the pass. And I was like 21, 22 when I started working for Phil, you know, as a sous chef, which is really young, but he put the trust in me to do it. So I had someone there who was encouraging from the very top, you know, and then obviously working for Brett, I never seen anyone work that hard or be that dedicated. And you know, it was a hard kitchen and you got your bollikins when you needed it, but it was always in just and it was fair. It was never personal, never aggressive or violent. It was just, everything was about what you're cooking and what you're doing. And I felt I got a lot from that as well, you know. And then obviously Martin at Sepia, same thing, very, very much like stern, high standards. But if you're there for the standard, you learn the leadership as you go.
Yeah.
You know, it's sort of, they surrogantly teach it, you know, and if you want to listen and take it, you'll take it.
I was going to say, you've got to be ripe to learn that and hear that. Like, if you don't want to hear it, they're quickly going to pick up on that and you're not going to progress. So you have to be very open to it.
That's it, yeah. And at each stage, I'd work for those people. I was a little bit more senior and a little bit more open-minded because all I wanted to do was open a restaurant like Porcine. That was the whole goal anyway.
Okay.
So when I saw these guys had their own restaurants and they were owner-operator, I thought, that's me. That's what I want to do. So that's why I really gravitated towards those people that I work for, you know.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah, I think it was a surrogate learning, but it was always on the table.
Yeah.
You know.
So you had a vision of opening your own restaurant and then you had the opportunity on leaving Sepia to go and take the reins at the old Fitz.
Yeah.
And you really became known there for very classic British pub inspired dishes. And I think that cooking style really, you really put your mark on the Sydney dining scene with what you were doing there. Tell us a little bit about what you were trying to achieve at the old Fitz.
I mean, at first I just wanted to stop doing what I'd been doing because it was fine dining for a very long time. And the Ledbury was, you know, harsh learning environment, strong, like just constant evolving. And Sepia the last 3 years, Marty didn't take his foot off the pedal. It was very still progressive and refinement and tweezers and all that sort of stuff, which like I don't cook now, but I have a deep appreciation for it. And I'm glad it's in the repertoire. But I think I just need to get out of that. And I was like, the furthest remove can be pub. You know, something where you don't want a Scotch egg and mustard. That's different to making little spheres out of mango or whatever you're doing, you know?
Yeah.
So I guess the change was what I needed more than anything. And I loved British pub food. And the second time I lived above Brett's pub for about a year, which is the Harwood Arms in Fulham. So, and it had a star and it's a beautiful pub, still there, still pumps. And it was a lovely thing to be able to go downstairs, have a Scotch egg and a pint and that sort of thing. So I fell in love with that sort of food purely by living there and then eating around London and all that sort of thing. So when it came to do the Fitz, it feels like a bit of an old English boozer. Like, because no one's really messed with it. And it's got those beautiful bones, tiny cramped kitchen. So you kind of, that negates what you can and can't do anyway. And there was only really 2 or 3 stars, me and one other or 2 others. So, it felt pretty organic to cook that food. You know, you just change like what your seasonings are on your larder from like, Martin's food had a lot of Japanese obviously and that sort of thing. And, Brett's food, very French and inspired and that sort of thing. So I guess you go, okay, well, we don't have that. We use like malt vinegar, we use bone marrow, we use, gravy, we use this, and those sorts of things. You just have to adapt and go, well, that's what you're given, that's what you're using. So therefore that's what we're going to cook. And I think it started to happen very organically with what we did.
And so did you take quite a departure from the menu that the old Fitz had to what you did, and how was it received?
Oh, we just kind of scrapped. Like it used to be, this, I went there to eat and it was a bit rough, It just had like kind of anything and everything, like salt and pepper squid and chicken wings. And a lot of pubs do that, that's fine. But I was like, if we're going to do it, we need to find a little mark and just stick with it, So it was Scotch eggs and raw beef on toast and just things that like in a pub with a pint, it's always going to be delicious. You know, you have to be like, that's just plain and simple. It's always going to taste good. If you do it properly, which that's the real key to great cooking, is doing it properly.
Yep.
If you do that properly, you make a delicious proper quiche, it's nice. That's why people make those things. So I kind of felt like that was a really good standing to go back to real basics and be like, this tastes good. Fish and chips done that way tastes great. Mm-hmm. Sunday roast tastes great. So I think, everybody talks about their food being flavor based. It's very much flavor based there because there's no real boundary between you and the patrons. So I would have people come to the door and I'm like, okay, well, what can I do? Like they would tell you straight. So there's no hiding, so, and I found that really humbling as well. And I was like, all right, okay. And it was like, we were coming into a very local based pub where locals ate and drank for years before. It's got a beautiful history. And they would just come back. All the locals all the time would come and just drop their plate and just tell you what they thought, whether they liked it or not. So I was like, righto, we kind of got a
direct feedback.
Direct feedback, very direct. Yeah, a little too direct in some way. Yeah. But it was good. It was a great experience. Yeah.
So while you were there, did you have the idea of Porcine kind of forming in your mind? Were you kind of were you using it as a bit of a testing ground, or had you not quite sort of visualized what was going to come next?
Yeah, I guess a bit of both. Okay. Like in some ways I started to form it because in my head, I was at the Fitz for 5 years. I was like, I want to be here for a long time. We only did a year because of COVID. But we did a lot of, a bit of butchery, not whole animal as much as we'd like to. We cooked a lot of pork, a lot of pig's head and lots of pigs. And because didn't have the budget, we couldn't sell it for so much because you're in the pub. So it's like, okay, well, we got to use cheaper ingredients and cook them properly. So therefore you can't afford to buy a whole pig because it costs you, $1,000 or whatever it is each week. That's going to ruin the costs, etc. So the forming of the idea for Porcine came a little bit out of that place, but it was hard to get the full vision because you're kind of cooking what you're cooking, Yep. I guess I've always loved French bistro food. It's what I've really learned as a base, and even when I worked in other places, I was more obsessed with classic French than anything else.
So was using kind of the secondary cuts more, it was more a sort of needs than an intentional thing. And from that, you kind of learned what the breadth of opportunity was to create really flavorful food at a
and also
price.
People accepted it. People were like, oh, this is cool. No one's cooking this.
Yeah.
So like we would do kidneys on toast and we'd sell 10 portions because people were like, no one's cooking this. This is great. I'm like, oh, cool. So we learned that we can cook those classics properly and people are lapping them up. So I was like, all right, well, that gives you a bit of a license to kind of go for it, And we do like a whole pig's head, like a porchetta or something, and serve a slab of that with some chips and green sauce or something, and people would accept that as much as they would a roast loin of pork.
Yeah.
So it came from like what started as, well, we can't afford the posh ingredients, to people just wanting that. And I was like, well, that's great. That worked for us.
And I remember you had that great blackboard menu just outside the kitchen.
Yeah.
You like add stuff on and cross stuff off. So it was really agile to what you were hearing from the customers.
And that's exactly right. Like when we started doing the blackboard, I found some photos of that the other week, and the first couple were like 3 or 4 specials. And then on a Saturday night, it would take me half an hour to write, to be like 11, 12 dishes on there, and I'd be writing out in chalk and sort of to get them on. But it was a really great way of cooking, and we wasted nothing. Yeah. I think that was the other big part, was that wastage is such a big thing, especially in a lot of these refined kitchens, that when it's all money and it's all on the table, you waste it, it's gone.
Yeah. And you're responsible for it.
You're responsible.
It's your food. Yeah. It's your bottom line because it's your business.
That's it. Yeah. And then any trimmings would used to go into pies and that sort of stuff. And we would do loads of pies because I realized, like, you put a lid on a braise, it's good. Yeah. It's hard to sell like a chopped up piece of meat. Everyone's just like, I'm not just eating slop. But if you really look after it and do it properly, you can make some great, make great money, but also make great food out of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was good.
I want to dive into talking about Porcine in a minute, but you just mentioned, well, we're obviously talking about making use of unusual ingredients and secondary cuts and things people wouldn't normally go to, I guess, as a go-to. Let's talk a little bit about Smoketrap eels, and because you mentioned COVID, and that was a bit of a COVID project, wasn't it? So yeah, tell us about Smoketrap. How did it come to be?
Well, through the pub, because we were getting like proper British. We had like jars on the bar where it had like pickled eggs and like cheese sitting in port and all that sort of stuff and beer nuts, and we're like, it was getting more British. We wanted to offer more stuff straight across the bar.
Right. Okay.
So the idea originally was to do like hot smoked eel, so that when we shut between lunch and dinner, or we didn't used to do lunch Monday, Tuesday, purely to get the amount of work done in the kitchen because it was so small and it was pretty quiet. So the idea was you could come and have like a piece of toast with some smoked eel and horseradish and then all the pickles and that sort of stuff and sausage roll or something. So it kind of started purely from that. And then the catalyst for it was that we would get eels from the market live, and I mean that was a nightmare. Like live eels sucks.
You're like, sure, shut up.
It sucks. Basically, when I worked for Martin, I asked him about doing eels, and he's like, "Oh, we've done them here before," so he got some in, and a very clever way of doing it, which I think is brilliant, but doesn't work for the scale that Smoketrap works on. Was he would get the whole eel, get like a cream bulb gun with a little needle on the end of it, and then put 3 charges, take the head off the eel, and then put the charges in so it blew all the vertebrae out. Very much like ikijimi.
Whoa,
but it was just used with air, and the whole thing would go completely limp, and you could cut it straight away.
Wow.
Very cool. Great technique. I mean, blood everywhere, but it's not the point.
So a humane way to kill the eel, but then you're also preserving the quality of the meat
instead of putting them
well.
to sleep in ice,
you
sort of calm them down in ice a bit, and then just lop the head off and the tail off, and then push that, and all the vertebrae sort of come out there.
Wow. Okay.
Very, very cool trick. And I was like, oh, that's how we're going to do it. This is going to be great. And then I think the first time I did it was at the pub. There's an open door, and people used to queue in front of the door. I don't know if you remember, to go down to the theatre.
Yeah.
So you'd have like 60 people queuing at like 6:30, and I'm in there with like this eel, and there's like blood up the wall, and I'm trying to blow the thing out. That was the real first kind of batch that we did, and we were trying to find a closer link to the supplier. So it wasn't just going through the market, because you're paying a lot of money, and it doesn't really work out financially to put it even in a pub. So I actually did a fishing TV show with Andrew Eddinghouse.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
And then someone had talked about it. Some of my mates had done it, and one of them went like refishing for coral trout. One went barramundi, and I was like, "Oh, this sounds great." And then I did eels in the Hawkesbury in like the dead of winter, pissing rain at 4 a.m. But it was really cool, and Smoketrap wouldn't be around if I didn't do it. So met this young guy Nipper who's still.
Oh, Paul Aquilina.
Yeah, Paul. Yeah, he's great, and he's just he's such a character as well, and like eels are his life, so he tells you everything about him, and his own little ways of getting them and that sort of thing. So we went around with him doing all that, getting the eels, and then he became the direct contact, So we still use him every now and then, but we have other guys that have come on board as eel fishermen. So we take longfin eels from the Hawkesbury up past Lemon Tree Passage up that way, and trap them in the traps, purge them for a couple of days, which is a really important part of them sort of getting some of the mud out. Otherwise it can be very dirty, which I find short fin have that dirtiness to them. It's hard to get away from, whereas a long fin, much bigger, much sort of cleaner animal in the first place, and a bigger flesh and a bigger body. So we take them from there, put them to sleep, gut them, blanch them, smoke them. We brine them in treacle, and then we smoke them for about 8 hours, and then pack them all up.
Wow.
So we go through 60 to 80 kilos every 2 to 3 weeks.
Wow. Okay. That's a lot.
Yeah. And it's pretty private. We just go through restaurants. I mean, a lot of restaurants in Sydney have used them. It's been great.
So what have you learned from that? Have you learned, like, in terms of like sourcing directly, sourcing sustainably, using lesser known or used ingredients? Yeah.
I mean, like, look, if we opened a bacon factory, we'd be rolling in cash. It's a really nice investment, if I'm honest. But it's one of those things. It's like, it has to be a passion project if it's something that you really believe in and want to do.
Yeah.
And part of the reason for doing it is because you get beautiful smoked eel in London and in Europe, and I kind of miss those ingredients. But now we're at a point where having that direct link to those people is like, okay, we need to purge them for another day or two, or we only take these sizes.
Yeah.
So, we used to take everything in the traps, but now they can sell the smaller eels through the Asian market, for the fish market, and we take 3 to 5 kilos. You get some real river monsters in there. Like, we've got pictures of ones that are sort of 6 kilos, like
Ooh,
you know.
scary.
Yeah. If they wake up when you butcher them, it's horrible.
Yeah. Okay. Let's not talk about that.
Yeah, we'll leave that one alone. I'll save that story for another day. But yeah. Look, it's a great little project, and it's going great guns. So yeah, really proud of it.
Yeah, congratulations. Well, we've tasted it, and we've done a session with you.
Yeah, that's right.
At Fine Food in previous years, and everyone that tasted it absolutely loved it. So yeah, you definitely sort of hit the mark there.
Thank you.
You really have carved your own pathway in all of these kind of initiatives, what you did at the old Fitz, Smoketrap, Eels, and now at Porcine. And when I was thinking about, our conversation today, I was really thinking about how I would describe your food at Porcine, and I actually couldn't nail a way of describing it, because it is kind of British influenced. It is very grounded in French classical techniques. It's very technique driven. But how would you actually describe it?
I was hoping you'd do that for me.
Okay. Yeah.
I've been asked this a couple of times. Look, there's all sorts of ways to do it. Like, we just blanket and say it's French bistro. But French bistro here, a lot of the time, to be honest, it's a bit sort of cookie cutter from Paris. People can go to a place like that and they go, I like that tablecloth and I like that, and I like that menu, and you do steak frites, you do snails, you do a creme caramel.
Yeah.
And they're all great things. And I don't, diss anyone doing that. But we kind of want to step away from just being the norm anyway. And I've worked in places that have taught me far more than just doing steak frites and snails. So the technique behind it, that the eras that we look at is sort of that almost 60s, 70s, 80s is a big inspiration when Nouvelle came around, and French was really the top of the world, and in a lot of ways it still is in some places, but I just felt like they fully drove that that movement of technique driven food. It's always been about produce, absolutely, and there's a lot of simple things done with produce, and without the produce you don't have the flavor or the backbone of the cuisine in the first place. But technique is what the French cuisine is all about, and I feel like we sort of mirror a lot of that at Porcine. So I'd say it's French bistro. It's a bit nouvelle in those sort of ways, but modern because we're here. We're in Australia. We're not in France. We have to use ingredients that are here, and that's a really good part of it as well, because we can chop and change things in and out. I
think you found a real niche, and you're really kind of taking a very creative approach to it, which I love. And I think the distinctiveness is, the eclectic collection of crockery and porcelain that you plate things on, but then the intricacy of the, the dishes and the real deep dive into pâté en croûte and things that, people have stepped away from because they are very labor intensive. They're very technique driven. So you've got to have the skill in yourself, but also the team to be able to execute them consistently. So you've really carved quite a unique niche there. And pork has really taken a sort of driving seat in it all.
Totally.
It's very nose to tail. And so why pork? Was there any particular reason?
Well, I think, pork in French cuisine is huge, massive, especially in the charcuterie aspect of things. Everything's pork, and in the pâté side of it, I sort of dipped my toe in it at the Fitz. We used to do a terrine there. We always have a terrine on. So I sort of learned a lot about like the farce, which is such an important part of the terrine. That's the bit that makes it delicious. The pastry and everything is the science, and the cooking and all those sort of things for pâté en croûte, and the jelly and all that sort of stuff. And those parts, once you nail them, that can stay consistent. But what is in the farce is what people really eat. So I guess when we're doing all that, the naked terrines, we just wrap them in crepinette and bake them in the oven and press them, which we still make. We make them for the wine bar. We sort of learnt a lot there. So by the time it comes time to doing things like pâté en croûte de porcine, it feels, it's been like 3 years since we've been making them now, and I feel like we're getting to a point where we sort of nail them each time. They're not blowing out and carbon half off and throwing the bin or whatever. We've had some shockers, but that's all part of cooking. You kind of got to suck that up and learn through it. But
But you've also got the nice sort of, I guess, dynamic between, you've got Porcine and you've got the restaurant upstairs, but then you've also got Allon carve with the guys at P&V now. So you've got the opportunity to have the two different menus. So how does that work? Like, is that a good way to kind of balance out?
And there's just stuff that we can't really serve upstairs that we can serve downstairs. And sort of posh stuff upstairs, like the duck press and those sorts of things that you normally find in the big ritzy places of the world. And to do it in our little shop really feels nice. But, even something as simple as like poutine. We put poutine on downstairs.
I saw that, yeah,
it goes nuts. But if you're sitting in a nice courtyard drinking wine, it's a great thing to eat. We did it upstairs once with pig's head, a slice of pig's head on the top and some foie gras in the sauce to make it a bit bougie, but it still felt like every table just ate chips and gravy and fell asleep and didn't have dessert. And I was like, doesn't really suit Porcine. If you're coming out for your anniversary and you pump a bowl of Porcine, doesn't bring the romance. So I feel like those sorts of things we can go up and down. We recently, in the last 12 months, gained like a really sharp pigeon supplier, which is something I've always wanted to have on the menu. And we worked our way up to being able to sell that as well. So now we serve the whole bird upstairs, and then we make a parfait from the livers and serve that downstairs.
Yeah.
So those sort of things work out really well. Like I say, we still make those terrines without the pastry, the naked ones, and we age them in Armagnac and brandy for like 2 weeks, and then serve a slice of that with some duck fat toast downstairs, and then the pâté en croûtes upstairs.
Yeah.
So we kind of
beautiful.
I feel like the wine bar doesn't need to be, overly creative, just delicious and simple, and everything is based heavily on those places you see in Paris and in Lyon, where it's a little wine bar. You just pop in, you have a couple of snacks and a glass of wine, and you're good.
Yeah, yeah.
We're not doing full meals. There's no whole fish or steak and chips or anything like that. It's very much just like come in, snacks, wine.
Yeah.
And it feels good to do that. It's nice to just be like, oh, it's great. Just put it in the cave. Good.
Yeah. It feels like you guys have really hit a great rhythm with what you're doing. And like you said, you've got the balance between being able to use the whole animal, but then using it in different ways across the two different menus.
Yeah.
So we talked right at the beginning about competitions and how we met through Young Chef. So I just wanted to, I guess, understand what made you enter Young Chef at the, young age of 22. And then you've most recently been involved in the Bocuse d'Or and with the winner of the Golden Knife. So that was a pretty intense competition, which we'll get to in a minute. But why did you enter Young Chef? Were you encouraged to?
I've done competitions throughout my career at certain stages. One was as a first-year apprentice, and that mad Irish guy that I worked for at Spittler's, he made me go in one when I was a real junior.
Right.
And I remember it like it was yesterday. It was a shocker. I had to do this little timbala vegetables and something else. I remember burning my hand with oil, and like I went down like a sack. It wasn't a good vibe. But it was the first taste of doing that. And other than like, you kind of compete with the other people you work with in the kitchen when you're trying to advance as a junior. But this was real, like I was standing next to someone and it was me versus them, and I was like, oh, this is real competition. And I guess those things, and it's to be said for all these competitions right the way through my career, it's not necessarily about getting it right during service or during mise en place. It's on that day, that dish, you do it or you don't. And all the practice of working in the restaurant is what puts you instead for that day.
Yeah.
So unless you can really zone in and focus and block everything out and just do that task specifically that way, you won't get through this competition.
Yeah.
So I feel like each time I've done one, I've been a bit more grounded and learned like, oh, okay, where am I at? Am I on the right level? Because everything is scrutinized. People during work may not see you not wipe your bench down properly, or they might not see you the way you do things. But in a competition, because the judging is so scrutinized, especially something like the Bocuse d'Or, they're watching you at all times. So you have to be on the game. And I feel like each time I've done it, I've walked away learning something really valuable for how I work in the restaurant,
And you went to London not long after it, didn't you?
Straight after, yeah.
Yeah.
So I think I got second place, runner-up, and the People's Choice. And one of them sent me to Luke's place in Tokyo to cook.
Yep.
And then the other one sent me for Hong Kong for a week. And then with that, I think because Virgin was a sponsor then, I just divvied the flight and went straight to London. So I went to Hong Kong, Japan, and then to London.
Yeah, awesome.
And that's when it all really started, I think. That's when all that cockiness was gone. I was like, oh,
okay.
I landed at Ledbury and I was like, okay, this is real.
Yeah, almost you kind of start back at the start again.
Yeah, and I think I'd done 2.5 years there, and I went in Young Chef of the Year for London, which is one that Brett had won when he was at the Square before he opened the Ledbury. So, and he was very encouraging and would do like a lot of testing. So like I would come in on my day off and he'd set the mystery box and I'd have to cook and then ask me a bunch of questions, which was really great training. Again, that's that mentor, of the right people sort of pushing in the right stead.
Yeah.
And I think I got third on the day or something. I didn't quite get through it, but again, an amazing experience to do and to see. And even the judges was like Bruce Poole, Angela Hartnett, I think Sat Baines. It was pretty cool. Like for the people who were there to judge on the day, it was very big for me. Is like I was still a junior at the Ledbury, then to the chef de party, and I was like, this is a big eye opener as well.
What encouraged you or inspired you to get involved in the Bocuse d'Or? It's quite an intense competition. So what was your mindset going into that? What was your sort of reason for doing it and your strategy? And
reason for doing it, partly, like, look, I've always loved the idea of it, and I just think it's such a beautiful. It's the biggest competition in Europe. It's very big. We look at Bocuse for a lot of inspiration. I've been to the restaurant 2 or 3 times to dine now, and when you go there, as you walk up, there's like this the brass path of all the names etched into it who've been on the podium of a Bistro store. And I've always been, the last time I was there, I was like, that'd be pretty cool.
Like the Hollywood Hall of Fame.
Kind of, yeah, it is a bit, yeah. And the first time I went, I sort of spent a bit of time looking at them all. There's some big names on there, you know. But more recently, I just thought, wow, what do you got to lose? Like, you know, it's the same as any of these competitions I've done. I was just have a crack, you know. And Martin Ben is one of the mentors and part of it now. And literally, Marty rang me and said, you should have a go. You go into it. So it was kind of only 6 weeks from the competition that I sort of knew about doing it. And it was pretty intense. I did a lot of testing at work and all that sort of thing. It was really good. Like, it was, I guess the idea of going into it was like, yeah, let's just have another crack. Let's see how we go.
I think it's well suited to your style of food as well.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally. And that was another part of it, was I'd seen what had been done and I was like, you know, even for I was actually on holidays in Thailand when I got the message of like, you're in and you've got this. And I was like, shit, and it's 4 weeks out. And I was like, but then as soon as I saw it was like saddle of lamb, like cooked whole and sliced, I was like, we did that anyway. And then a galantine of dark, I was like, we did that anyway. It's great. There was stuff there that I thought, I felt comfortable straight away understanding what this year's theme was. And I was like, this is good. I feel like I can have a crack here, you know?
So you just had to master like doing it under the scrutiny of everyone watching and all that, you know?
It was like making it sharp enough.
Yeah.
You know, because intentionally at Porcine, there's some stuff that we just leave rustic because it's delicious and that's how it's done. And I'm like, I could make that really fancy and do some jazzy stuff to it, but I'm like, it's not going to make it more delicious, so I don't bother.
Yeah.
There's some things at Porcine that honestly we just go like, it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, you know, and I kind of felt like if there was any battle for me going into Bocuse, it was to make things a bit more refined and make it a bit Bocuse store worthy, you know, because there is a specific, if you look at it, there's a specific way the things is done and cooked.
Yeah.
And if you just want to put a slice of carrot on the plate, they're not going to fly. So I was like, okay, we got to really look at how we're doing this.
Yeah.
So I think that was the biggest sort of change part for me.
Yeah.
But as far as like locking into cook on the day, I was like, oh, I've done this before.
Yeah.
This is the same. There's no different pressure to working in a Michelin-starred kitchen or 3-hat kitchen that you just have to lock in and go for it and block all the other shit out. It's a long game. And at first it seemed a bit shocking, but it's actually a good thing to do because Australia's far removed from the competition in Europe. But my round doesn't start until 2028 because I'm the candidate for 2029.
Right.
So there's a gentleman in front of me, Paul Golding. He's the one that won it last time. So I shadow him to Singapore when he goes and I'm part of the team, logistics on the ground, all that sort of stuff, helping, not the commie on the day, but just the bits and bobs. And then should he get through to Leon, I go for that part as well.
Yeah.
So the way they do it here by giving you a run up is just so you can see what you're in for. And I think it's actually really good. At first I thought 4 years is a long time, you know. I've had Porcine 4 years. A lot happens, you know.
Yeah.
But also it's actually really good for understanding what's coming.
Yeah.
Because it's one of those real, like, you do it on the day or you don't.
Yeah.
And I think like if you go in blind, even just the worry of that is enough to throw you off.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, I think it's a really good way that they do it. Definitely.
And a great goal to strive towards.
Totally.
You know, knowing that you've got that sort of end game to, the end game, but you know, that it's coming and you're preparing for it and you're constantly evolving and
Exactly.
Yeah. So in terms of, you know, you've talked a lot about the mentors you've had and how they've guided you and how they've really helped you sort of understand the journey you needed to take and you needed to push yourself. What's your leadership style at Porcine? How do you mentor rising young chefs in your kitchen or, you know, in the community in Sydney?
Be the cook, not the chef.
Be the cook, not the chef.
Be the cook, not the chef. That's what we teach them. It's not about like, you have to, the fundamental basis of what you're doing is cooking. Yep. And the reason that most of us as chefs get into the industry in the first place is to be really good at cooking. And I feel like it's a really important thing that kind of gets a bit overlooked. Everyone wants to be the chef, or especially with social media these days and that sort of thing. It's very easy to be famous on paper.
Yeah.
But to physically be a good cook is a different thing. And I found like progressing through kitchens as a junior, I just spent all my time learning to be really good at cooking.
Yeah.
So like if you get
the foundational skills, I mean, like really get that.
But also day to day.
Yeah.
You have to prove yourself every service. It's not like, oh, I remember that one time I cooked meat real good. It doesn't work like that. You know, and I feel at Porcine, I kind of just drive into the guys that like, you have to do all the little things all the time.
Yeah.
And you have to be like I said before, you just got to do it properly. That's it. If you're making a stock, skim it properly, reduce it properly, caramelize your vegetables properly for the sauce. You know, all those little things I feel are what really makes the big difference. And they're all working at Porcine because they want to learn how to cook classics and fundamentals and that sort of stuff, which is what we do day to day. And the refinement comes later down the line. Yeah. They learn that too. But I feel like you got to focus on being great at cooking is the first and foremost thing of our kitchen specifically, you know.
So you're essentially saying don't try and rush it.
Don't rush it. I was 18 years before I took a head chef role.
Right.
You know, and I'm like, and that was one of the best things I did. I felt like I was the eternal sous chef. I was there for like, in that role for 8 to 10 years. But
and frustrated by that? Or
not really. No.
Okay.
I did take a small head chef position the first time I came back from the Ledbury, and it wasn't the right thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then I went back as a sous chef at Ledbury, and I really started to strive and go, okay, this is what I want to do. And because I spent a lot of time in that position, my sous chef now, I know how to treat and talk to that person.
Yeah.
You got to build them up. You know, you can't be screaming at the sous chef in front of the other people, or not that I do that anyway, but the point is that, like, you have to be encouraging to those guys regardless. You know, your senior team is you.
Yeah.
So if you're beating them down, it's not a good look for anyone, but also it doesn't help anyone.
Yeah.
So I kind of realized, like, being in that position for a long time now that I'm the head chef, I've got these people that count on me to do it. So yeah, the basis is like, fundamentally, it's all about learning to cook properly, doing all the little things like pick up after yourself, cling film that properly, label that properly. All that stuff becomes painful. And I understand that as chefs get through their career, they drop some of that stuff off because, like, it's too hard. Well, like, I'm the head chef now, I don't do that shit.
Yeah.
I've got the clipboard now.
Yeah.
But I'm like, for me as the head chef, I've got to work as hard as the commie, as the sous chef, as the chef de partie. It's all there. And I feel like it's tiring, but that's the job.
Yeah.
You know, to be good at it, you constantly just have to be doing all those things every day.
So you've got some great things ahead of you. You've just opened the collaboration with P&V, Carve, Porcine's going great guns. How do you see Sydney's dining scene sort of evolving, and what role do you hope to play in that in terms of what you're doing and, you know, what you've got ahead of you?
I don't know. I think the dining scene's endless, you know. It just seems to keep going and going and going. There's a strong emphasis on like, I say Sydney, but hospitality in general has always been, once something starts, a few trends follow. You know, a lot of people just sort of like are happy to fit into the mold of what that person's done because they're successful. And there's a lot of groups these days. Everybody wants to open more than, you know, 2, 3, 4. And there's been a big push since COVID of big money going into big brasseries and the big thing. And I guess we just sit in our little shop and do our thing. And I'm really happy doing it.
Yeah.
You know, I think like,
but staying in your lane, just doing, focusing on what you're doing and what you're enjoying.
Like, let them do what they want to do.
Yeah.
We're not the whole industry.
Yeah.
So for us, we're a small business run by 3 people. That 2 work on the floor and 1 works in the kitchen every day. We try to get great people who work for us to be better when they leave than when they started. And also just keep carving our little path, you know. There's not many, you know, a lot of people come in, they're like, oh, no one's doing what you're doing. And I'm like, that's because we just do what we do. Yeah. We just head down and keep going, you know. And you're doing it very, very well. Yeah, we just want Porcine to be the best it can be. And I feel like we're 4.5 years in now, and it's definitely at the best it's ever been, you know, and it keeps going forward, and we're really proud of it. So you should be. You're doing a really amazing job. Thank you. Thank you for coming in to join us. It's been really amazing to watch your journey from when we first met at age 22 to where you are now. And I have no doubt there's incredible things to come ahead with Porcine and competitions and everything else that you have going on. But Nik, thank you for joining us. Thanks for having me. Cheers.
Thanks for listening in. We hope you enjoyed the conversations as much as we did.
And a special thanks to Unox Australia for their support. If you want to learn more, head to their website.